All right, we're live. Welcome everyone to episode 147 of The Glow. It's so beautiful to be in such an amazing setting. We're out in the magical beauty of Appalachia outside Asheville, North Carolina. Incredible drive through cows and goats and horses. And our guest today is my dear friend Michael Parisi. So good to be with you.
Great to be here with you too.
Thanks for being with us.
Absolutely.
Michael and I had we've done some retreats together and some set songs together and just, did some things that were fun adventures together. And here's one more. So it's great to be together. Great to be with you. How are you feeling?
Feeling good. Yeah, feeling good. Had a good day. Went out to Big Ivy and got my feet on the earth and in the water.
You got this beautiful location out here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is it about? What is it about nature? What is it about the mountains? What is it about the forest? Like, what is it that draws you to space like this?
It feels nature invites that naturalness out of us. That our natural state of presence and relaxation and allowance to really look at nature and see how nature itself is allowing everything to be as it is, and so it kind of has that resonance, that frequency that I feel really invites us into that. And I love it.
I was thinking about what's a theme. So, we just have the idea here is just I have these amazing conversations with people like you, and it's like that feeling of like, what if we could just share that, And I was like, wait a minute, we can share it. We can share it. So it's like just sharing live, spontaneous conversation live on Facebook, which is another level. So it's like all this aliveness, and then to share it out in these other channels we have, YouTube and SoundCloud and iTunes. And but I was feeling like, okay, we have a theme to start with, right? And I was looking at some of your writing last night, and there's a phrase, "love without demands." And I was like, wow, that's like it. That's it. That's the theme, So it's like being in nature, walking through the forest out here, through the mountains. There's like this sense of, like nature doesn't require anything of you to like embrace you and to like, to love you, essentially. Right? But there's this interesting question with love, because love is used so many different kinds of ways, right? Mm-hmm. So how would you define love?
In its deepest essence, to me, is the movement of presence, in a way that there's this all-encompassing presence, and the fullness of that presence seems to be love, seems to be that unconditional allowance, that there's this love that is existent, that all form is a manifestation of, and so this presence that we are actually has no demands upon us whatsoever, or no judgments, that anything and everything that can arise or come and go, this love is still here, it's calm, and it's simply allowing everything to come and go as it may, completely unbiasedly, and it has no demands on the moment whatsoever.
Love it. Love it. It's so beautiful to hear someone like speaking my language, It's it's like that's the essence of really what meditation is, right? It's that sense of like the way I heard it sometime that I appreciated was an unconditional relationship with the moment. Right? Mm-hmm. So like if you're in an unconditional relationship with the moment, then you're essentially in love with the moment. Mm-hmm. Love without conditions, love without demands. Same thing. And if you are in love with the moment, then this next step is like, well, it's always this moment. It's never not this moment. So it seems like this overwhelming sense of like, oh, I have to love everything. It's like, oh my God, there's so many things to love. How can I love everything, especially that person? But when you realize it's like, oh, it's actually just loving this moment, which really just means accepting this moment. And why would I not accept this moment? Because this moment's here. Right? Mm-hmm. So it's like love without demands is like just this the pure depth of just being with with what's here and what's now.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And there's this sense that, like, I think we have a tendency to want to, we put so much emphasis on thinking that there's this tendency to want to kind of overthink, or like, what's the strategy, or how do I get there, or how do I, like, what are the steps, you know? And I find that can be, that's some of the things we've talked about in some previous episodes recently. Like, I find that you can get stuck there, where you're, I'm a spiritual seeker, I'm looking for enlightenment, how do I get there? I'm here, it's over there, how do I get from here to there? Is that something that you, like, have experience with yourself, or experience with that people you've worked with?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. It's been a journey to realize that the seeking kind of is just a never-ending hamster wheel.
Mm.
That there is this seemingly separate entity, and then there's a seemingly separate thing, this idea of enlightenment that we really don't even know what it is, but we're chasing it, or whatever it may be, whether it's enlightenment or happiness, fulfillment, whatever we're calling it. And it's this constant cycle that kind of just leads to more and more chasing, until the moment comes that it's realized that there's really nothing to chase, that what we've been chasing is always just right here as we are, and that this unconditional presence, this unconditional allowance is what's always here. And to, instead of being the one who's trying to be still, trying to fabricate stillness or fabricate even meditation to be the meditator, it's just notice what's already actually still. What's already completely present, calm, aware, that's never changed throughout our entire life. Every thought, every feeling has come and gone. There's been this still, conscious presence, which is love. Throughout my experience and my own kind of direct investigation of all of this, it really has this quality of it's like a mother presence almost. There's just this unconditional feeling within it.
Yeah, I would like what you said about, it's like, instead of like searching for the stillness, like recognizing the stillness that's already here. I think that's a huge shift in awareness. Because I think all we're really wanting to do is become aware of really what's true, you know, and like being aware of that which is already the case, and that which is unchanging, and that stillness that's unchanging, regardless of the sounds that are appearing or disappearing. Like I was talking about quiet, a satsang last week, and it felt like some people were getting the sense that I was talking about the absence of sound, which of course that's one way it's defined, just like love is defined all these different ways, you know.
Exactly.
But there's a quiet that's present even when there's sound, right? And it's like you just have to notice it. You just have to be aware of it. And really, I think the fundamental component of all of this that we're getting into is being present. Being present, being in the moment. Because when you're present in the moment, then you're aware of everything that's here that we're pointing at. But if you're not present, then of course you're not, even though it's still here. It's still you, but you're not aware of it, right? So I just think, the sense of being present. That's one of the things that one of the phrases I've been using with friends is, would you like to share some presencing time together? You know?
I love that.
Yeah, kind of making it a verb, sharing presencing time together. By the way, if anyone has any questions or comments, Annie, hi Annie, you say hi. Hi, Annie's behind the camera, and she'll share some of what you guys are sharing at different points. Anything interesting happening so
There's
far?
Some comments from Tracy. It's complete contentment.
Complete contentment. Yeah. Tracy's in Australia.
Infinite flow.
This is a better time for her. Infinite
John
flow.
Stringer's in the house.
Hi, John Stringer.
Beautiful
Hey,
setting
John.
and conversation.
Thank you, sir.
Grace is here now.
Okay.
And then just some comments. I love these words.
Wow. Beautiful. Love you.
Yeah.
I like the infinite, this paradox of the infinite flow and the stillness. Like, is a sense of like that they're two different things, but they're actually not, right? They're the same thing. You want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. I love that notion of the seeming paradox. You know, it's like the mind's analysis. It's like, well, there's stillness and then there's flow, and the mind can't even conceive that that's actually one thing, and it's not even a thing, but for the use of words, that it's it's the movement of stillness, that stillness moves and stillness dances, and everything is an appearance of stillness and all movement. I love what our brother Ash, how he describes it, that in
Hi, Ash.
Hello, Ash. You're on.
Ash Ruiz.
Love you. That the form, the movement and form is a celebration of the stillness, and that there has to be, in my own contemplation, when I really look at these things through my direct experience, it's like, well, okay, so the elements themselves have to have something to change within, to actually exist within, space. There has to be space to be earth, air, water, fire, that which is always changing and in flux. But what is it actually resting in and as an expression of? Is this space. And so through this stillness, all is in flow because of stillness. There is flow, there is movement, and this infinite spontaneous action of life, which is really beautiful. But it's actually it's like two sides of one coin, in this beautiful seeming paradox, but it's love sees no paradoxes. Actually, love has no oppositions. It just it's the natural way.
Love without demands and love without opposition. Love without positionality. How about that?
Yes.
What does that spring forward to you? Love without positionality.
I love that. It's really, to me, love without positionality is the natural state of love, and that it's how love moves when there's not the idea of me, a separate me, and another separate me. That there's this position and there's another position. Actually, it's just all love with itself. That this is love, this is love, this is love, this space is love. It's all love with itself. And so there actually is no position for love. There is no center. It's actually completely centerless. It's just infinite space.
It brings a couple of things for me. I love what you're sharing. Positionality for me is like, I believe this, you know, and then it's like, do you believe this? And if you believe this, then I love you, you know. But if you don't believe this, then I don't love you, you know. So we have all these sort of ways where we can be attached, identified to positions, to beliefs, and we love people that share our beliefs. If they don't, we don't love them. You know, a classic case, of course, is organized religion. If you're my religion, I love you. But if you're not, then I might try to kill you or whatever, you know, right? So it's like there's a sense of like there's something that's beyond that beyond that the positionality is like sort of ever changing, and you realize that that's temporary too, you know. So I'm not this perspective I have. It's fine. You have to have a perspective to exist, right? So I'm looking at you from here. I'm not looking at you from over there. I'm only looking at you from here. But there's also, that's a valid way to look at you too, right? It's like, that's a totally valid way to look at you also. So there's like all these different ways to look at you, and they're all valid. I just happen to be from this particular perspective. I'm not attached to it, you know? So it's just so interesting how, you know, to hear the kind of the dialogue that's happening in the world, and it's like, you know, this attachment to beliefs, and this belief is right, this belief is true. It's not right. It's not true. In fact, anything that's I would say anything that's a belief automatically is not true, right? It's just a belief, and almost by definition, you know, I believe something. Well, that's cool. It doesn't mean it's not true. If you believe it, then it's not true. It's just a belief.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. The other thing is gosh, what was the other part of that? There was a second part to that about the positionality of getting attached to the positionality. It always comes back to me if it's important. but is there a way to transcend that, to feel a sense of love that's beyond, I love you based on your belief or this?
Yeah. To me, it's really, again, it's always like bringing it kind of back to what's already, to simply notice what's already doesn't have a position, what's the love that's there, and then there's like what is, just simply reality as it is, completely without our description of it. It just is. There's no definition, inherent meaning to any of it, and then we paste our description on it, and that's the positions that we experience. And so instead of being the one that's the separate entity that's trying to fix all these beliefs and whatnot, it's actually in a moment of recognizing, in a moment of stillness, recognizing the stillness that actually it doesn't have a position. It kind of pronounces it. It's almost like it turns it up, and suddenly the beliefs can melt away, or the positions can melt away, which is, I think, easier. It seems easier said than done, for sure.
I love what you're sharing. I feel like Oprah will be like, I love this. Don't you love this, audience? Audience, don't you love it? I feel like Oprah. But yes, it came back to me, as it always does. What's important. So
beautiful.
You're talking about loving everything. This is love. This is love. This is love. This is love. Everything is love. Their love. Everyone's love. That's love. So I think a question people have within that is like, well, what if I don't like somebody? Or what if I don't like a certain type of soup or a certain flavor of ice cream? Or like, is there space in that for, I guess, whatever, you can maybe choose a different word if you like, but disliking something or disliking someone or disliking a situation?
Absolutely. I love that question. It's a really good point. I think a lot of people generally can get caught up on that, and it's, we have these definitions around what love is, and so we think of it as just simply the warm fuzzy feeling, or that, whatever definitions we have about love. And yet when we really bring it back to unconditional allowance, what's this allowance for everything to be as it is? So your dislikes they're completely allowed. Everything, all your judgments, the beliefs, the pains, the anger, the joys, everything is already completely allowed. So what's allowing everything to be as it is? And to me, that's like kind of the nature of love. It's simply unconditional. So it's not that maybe the vibration of disliking something may not seem like love, but what's actually allowing that to be? This total allowance of everything to be as it is, whether it's a dislike or a like, and we can tend to really judge ourselves or others for disliking, but again, where's that judgment coming from? It's only coming from our own ideas. But actually, love is completely embracing every bit of it. It's all inclusive. No matter what comes and goes, there's this ground of being or foundation of existence, which is simply here, unbiasedly allowing and celebrating everything that is a miracle. The fact that the formless is manifesting as form in every moment is this total miracle, whether it's a dislike or whatever it may be. It's total.
I love it. Everything is a miracle. Everything is in the nature of the miraculous. And all inclusive. So it includes, this is interesting too, when you get into like a lot of the spiritual nature, like a lot of emphasis on positive thinking, right? I have to think positive, get rid of the bad thoughts, get rid of the negative thoughts. What's your view on that?
I've tried it. It's that's again a part of the never-ending cycle of the seeker that is constant. It's this belief that there's all these that we have to weed out all the negative thoughts, which there's value to that. It's not saying that there's not value in there. It's like bridges and stepping stones on our journey to potentially eventually just be that presence of love that is, and we always are that presence of love, but to actually consciously be embodied as that presence of love. there's these bridges to get there, and sometimes it comes into people's path to weed out the negative thoughts, or to have these practices that do support the sense of a me. You know, when there's this sense of a separate self that needs to be changed and altered in order to be better, it can be really valuable and helpful, for sure. And to again, to really rest as the presence that is all thoughts are coming and going through, that all feelings are coming and going through, and to simply notice, you know, it's like the Buddha talks about impermanence, that everything of the world of form is impermanent, down to the body, the thought, the feeling, situations, circumstances. All of this is impermanent. It's all a part and an emanation of consciousness, yet it comes and it goes. So to really recognize, take a step back in a sense, and recognize what's still while the thoughts are coming and going, what's noticing the thoughts come and go. And again, as we kind of notice that, it becomes pronounced, and maybe the mind will quiet down, maybe it won't. But we start to realize that the thoughts themselves really are not significant, that are moving through our consciousness. We just happen to pay so much attention to them instead of paying attention to our very own presence, our beingness, that it becomes a major project to be dealt with. And as through my own experience, what I've noticed is that actually the more that I've investigated my own experience to really see thought as it is without adding afterthought, and as presence becomes more, the volume kind of gets turned up on that, the less that these thoughts are agitating in the sense of seemingly affecting who I am, and actually meaning anything about who I am, or meaning anything about who someone else is or the world is. That there may be all these labels that flow, but they actually don't really have any suchness or reality to them. They're just kind of coming and going, and yet every 7 billion people on this planet are maybe having different thoughts about the same thing. So to really just, again, it's to notice what's allowing all the thoughts to come and go, and in that there's a resting and a relaxation that can be experienced directly.
I'm having this pretty wild, fun revelation right now to share. Yeah. That's the great thing about being present with people you love, is these revelations come through. So thought, it's like what's a thought, right? And it's like, well, whatever I say a thought is itself a thought. But what's that? Is that a thought? It's like you're caught in this loop that just goes around and around and around forever. And this is how people literally go crazy, because they're just spinning around in this loop. And at some point you have to just, it's almost like, I can go like this with my hands, it's like this expansion to this place where there's no such thing as thought. Like the whole thing's an illusion, right? And I think sometimes when we talk about illusion, people think that it's something bad or negative. That's not how I'm intending the word. Just that when you it's kind of like you see something and you, almost like a mirage in the desert, right? You see it and you want to go into it, and you go into it more and you can't find anything, you know? Then maybe you see it over there, and you see it, and when you go into it more and there's nothing there, you know? That's how I feel like everything in this material universe is. It's like if you go into it deeper and deeper, there's nothing there. You know, even scientifically, you know, there's just space.
There's space. And
thought is, you know, we get so wrapped up in thoughts and so agitated about this thought and that thought, and like, there's actually nothing there. It's an amazing revelation, you know. But then not to even take that as an idea. So then, the mind goes, okay, there's no such thing as thought. Let me hang on to that idea. That's also an idea. So it's really like this awareness of just, like you say, noticing what is, you know, noticing what is. And I find that what we're pointing at transcends even, I've been talking with friends, but I don't think I've talked with you about it yet, but it transcends even being spiritual, even the concept of spirituality.
This is something I've been reflecting on.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell me what you're reflecting.
So really looking into this, that, you know, because there's so much, just like love, the word love, because it's just a word, spirituality is just a word, love is just a word. It points to something beautiful. Yeah. But spirituality in general has gotten this it's just so much description around it. And so there's this whole, what we're talking about is the most concrete reality there is. Yeah. It's not abstract at all. It's actually, this is what is. It's what is, and this presence that is always here is always here. It's the only thing that is actually always here. And so what the word maybe enlightenment points to is simply experiencing everything exactly as it is, before thought, before description, seeing reality as it actually is. And so to wrap it up in spirituality, there's a lot of things that can seem, I don't really know how to describe it. It can really get wrapped up in a lot of magical means. I love magic, but the sense of, and to play, it's so much fun to play with, in that sense, but that it can really delude the person that's maybe trying to go after it, in a sense where it's it becomes this other thing. Yeah, you know, it becomes this other thing to chase, and we have to be a certain way, we have to act a certain way. Suddenly there's more rules when what we're pointing to is actually beyond rules. You know, suddenly I have to be this way, and I have to practice, and I have to do all these things just the right way, and it actually creates even more, ultimately it can create even more contraction, when what we're pointing to is absolute openness, that there's actually no rules about it. And so it's interesting. It's a good... Yeah, I love that. What we're pointing to is absolute openness, and there's actually no rules about it. Yeah. Like, to me, that sums it up perfectly. And then I think there's this question of, what about, like, what does that mean? You can just, like, kill people, you can just, like, stab people, or, like, how do you respond to that? So the beautiful part of this is, as we start to open to this openness, as we start to rest into presence more, it is innate well-being, it is innate peace, it's innate kindness, innate compassion. These are all innate qualities within presence. It's how presence moves in the world, and that's why when we see those, the beings who have really stabilized in this consciousness, they're usually out there. They may see certain part of the world as illusion, and that, you know, that word's, it's a funny word for sure, because it is, you know, it's here, but when you really look at those beings, they are exuding compassion and exuding kindness. And so it's as this awakening dawns, suddenly something else starts moving us other than our own egoic mind or conditioning, the ways we've been brought up, or the environments we've been in. We're suddenly no longer a product of that. We never were, but are in a conditioned sense. The way that this appearance shows up, a lot of times conditioning can really create a lot of the war and chaos, which is simply a result of the belief in separation. You know, the belief in separation is what causes all war, all anger and chaos in the world. So as we see through that illusion and see into the truth of inseparability, suddenly compassion starts moving us, love starts moving us, and we are a unique expression of love, a completely unique expression.
Yeah, that's an important component. I think what I've been noticing is that when there's this sense of like being completely open and I think what we're pointing at is being completely open and available for spirit, God, the intelligence. There's different words for it. None of the words they're just like poetry. They're not, but something outside of ourselves, something larger than this illusionary sense of a separate self to move us. That's what it's about, to be unified with something larger, be unified with all that is, and the intelligence that moves all that is. So then what I think I'm noticing it myself, I'm noticing other people, and we're starting to talk about it more, just like openly, is you get to that place, and this whole spiritual thing, it's like you gotta let it go. It's not useful anymore. It's because what happens is like I'm not open now, because I'm open to what I think is spiritual. And if I don't think it's spiritual, I'm not open to it. So that may be a lot of things, but it's not everything. There's certain things that I don't consider spiritual in that my idea, my positionality of spiritual. So I'm not totally available for spirit to move through me in the moment. I have ideas, It's like, I think the people that have really inspired me, as far as people that I've read or studied, other people that, Rumi talks about this. It was one example, just having to let go of all your ideas, even your ideas of what you think are right or wrong, like everything. It's like the ultimate humility. It's like I have no idea what's happening at all. I'm totally empty, right?
Yeah.
I'm totally empty for God, for spirit to fill me, and then what comes through me will be, as you say, exactly like of benevolence to all beings. But there definitely could be times where it's not the way I think. I'm supposed to, the ideas of, I'm supposed to act like this, I'm supposed to because we're all unique expressions. And that's what's so amazing, is like, it's so beautiful, is that we're not all supposed to act the same or talk the same or dress the same. We have all these unique expressions. And so just as an example, like, there's a way that love can come through that's not necessarily soft, It
can be fierce.
Yeah, it can be fierce. Exactly. And you got to be open for however that wants to move through you in a particular moment, having no idea like how it's supposed to be. And I like to think of Nisargadatta. I am that. So this guy, for the people out there, this guy, he would first of all, he's kind of like a big guy. He had this super intense look on his face. If you see this cover of this book, I Am That, he's like super intense, like a growl. And he would like yell at people in his satsangs. He'd like yell at people, smoking cigarettes the whole time. He ate like a ton of meat. He did everything that you weren't supposed to do in like Indian spirituality, But this guy was like, you read what he's sharing or you listen to what he's sharing, he's like totally awakened being, a unique expression of it. And so that's the beauty of it, I think you have to let go of trying to be anything, including trying to be spiritual. Just being open to, totally open to the moment.
I love that. Yeah.
So how did this, was there like this question's kind of sort of a corny question, but I feel like I want to ask it for whatever reason. Was there like a moment of awakening or a moment of something that was a shifting point for you that was significant, or was it sort of a gradual movement?
It was definitely gradual. Yeah, it was. It was just over time. I did have a few openings where they were pretty significant. That it was kind of like.
Tell us one. We want to hear one.
Okay, one good one.
Weren't you I had this vague memory of you were out in the forest. You were hiking.
Yeah,
that one.
Yeah. So I went. This was shortly after I actually was living in Asheville and I just had the inspiration to start driving across the country and explore. I'd never been west of really Tennessee much at all.
I've done the same thing multiple times. Isn't that amazing? You do it, and you do it by yourself, which I did too. And there's all this time just alone, just sitting, and it's like and all this amazing scenery is going by. It's just like this incredible meditation.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one of the most amazing times in my life, just being on the road and not having a plan or an agenda. It was just driving and kind of letting the infinite flow take me where it would. And so one of the big things at that time for me was that I was really it felt like I was taking this journey to leap in the unknown, metaphorically and also actually to just let go into that which I didn't know, and to let that unknown guide me throughout the journey, and to let it influence me to move me in the direction of being of greater service in whatever way that could be. That was really, if I had an intention, that was definitely the passion, was to really move in the direction of how I can be a vessel of greater love and service. And so I made it to Colorado, to Telluride, Colorado, and I went to hike up to Silver Lake, which is a 14,000 foot, it's 14,000 feet elevation, I think. And, being from North Carolina, I'm usually hiking like either in Tevas or barefoot. On the highest is 5,000 to 6,000 feet, I think Mount Mitchell is, but I've never even been to the top. So the highest I'd been was about 5,000 feet. And I hear that you need a guide, you need to go at this time because the storms start around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, like clockwork. But it was the middle of summer, it was hot. I'm like, I'm good, I'm going to go by myself. And there I go wearing my Tevas and my backpack, and had some snacks and a little bit of water. And so I start hiking up, and I see a woman and her kids, and they're coming out. They're like, it seems a little too risky, so we're actually coming out. And I was like, okay. I still felt the nudge to go, and I asked where to take the trail because it was kind of just like single track trail, and apparently a lot that veered off to the left and right. And she said, well, just keep veering to the left, and otherwise you'll be bushwhacking. So I was like, okay. And so every time I saw a left turn, I would go left. And at the lake entrance, basically where you would get to the lake, was about 100-yard width where you could get to lake level. Everywhere else was just peaks around the lake. And then there was this one entrance where the trail kind of led to. So me going left, I was apparently taking like deer trails or something. And I went left, and suddenly the trail started disappearing. And I was like, okay, well, this is interesting. But I still had this nudge to just keep going. And so I keep going, and I'm like, well, it can only be up. The lake has to be up. So I kept going, and eventually got to a point where I'm having to crawl on my hands and knees because it gets steep, and the clouds are coming over. It's like time for the big storm of the day, and so all these dark clouds come over, and it starts raining. It's getting really windy. The temperature drops big time, and I'm just determined. Crawling up this mountain, it's getting wet. I'm wearing sandals. My feet are starting to get really cold to the point of not really being able to use them, and being at an elevation that I've never been at before, so my breath is like really short, and eventually I just get to a point where I physically couldn't go anymore. And I look down, and I can't go down because if I go down, I'm just going to slide down all these wet wildflowers. It was like all wildflowers like this tall. I was like, well, I can't go down, and I can't go up because I'm just physically done. I'm like shivering at this point. My hands and feet feel like pretty much numb at this point, and started feeling like hypothermic. And so I like curl up in a ball, and the fear just starts trembling throughout my entire body. My nervous system is going nuts, and I thought that was it. You know, there was a point where I was like, there's no cell phone service, there's nobody in sight, I can't go up, I can't go down, my body is collapsing. And so there was that moment of just probably the most fear I've felt, in a sense, in my body, and just trembling and tears starting to come. I'm just like, you know, the thought of death, it's like so scary to us. And suddenly in a moment I acknowledged death. I was like, okay, this could be it for this body. I may not make it past this. And when I said that, when I felt that, suddenly everything relaxed. It's like my whole body relaxed as I surrendered into the thought of death, the thought of this body not being here. Suddenly it just wasn't scary anymore, and everything relaxed. And in that relaxation, wisdom started working as this body. I knew where to send my breath, I knew what to do, and it was a moment kind of it was a breakthrough moment where I suddenly saw that it was everything was okay. It was like, as this presence kind of made itself known, that includes the body, absolutely includes the body, but that there was something here that's not dying, that doesn't die. And I just had that sense, and at that moment in time, it wasn't like conceptually, that's not what I was thinking, is, oh, there's this presence here that doesn't die. But the experience was definitely of that, because it was total okayness to die. And suddenly, this kind of jolt of it was like this emptiness, and then suddenly this like fullness of joy actually started coming through me. And I'm still in tears even, but it's like the feeling of the tears shifted in a sense. And I just, in that okayness, I looked up and I looked at the sky. I was like, well, if I'm meant to continue in this body, show me the way, you know. And this is really funny and kind of could be hard to believe to most people, but the clouds actually went whoop, and the sun came down and started radiating on my feet and my hands and my body, and it kind of shined a pathway, and it literally showed me the way, and it gave me the way to actually warm the body up, and it was like this transcendent energy came through my physicality, and I started just climbing up the mountain, and I eventually get to the top. Still, it's like the body was still exhausted, but there was this other essence coming through. And I get to the top, and I look down, and the lake's like 200 or 300 feet down this cliff, because I went to the left around the entrance, all the way up the side of the cliff, and then I had to go down this cliff where it's nothing but trees and rocks and just completely steep. And I just look, and I'm like, well, and the sense of fear wasn't there. It was just like, well, this is a journey. This is going to be fun. And I actually took a picture, because I was like, I don't know how many people have actually been here. So I took a picture, and then I found like a rock slide to slide down, and it was pretty intense. There was like rocks like flying all around me. None of them actually hit me or hurt me, but I'm like digging my feet into this rock slide, super steep, and eventually make it to the bottom. And I did survive. I'm still here. And so that was definitely a moment of seeing and of actually directly experiencing this presence that the body is a manifestation of, yet it's not dependent on it. It doesn't die when the body dies. It doesn't die when a thought dies. When a situation comes and goes, it doesn't. It actually is just always here. It's always been here. And so from that, I actually I was on my way to Sedona, so I thought, and our brother Ash came up into my awareness, and he had invited me before to come hang out with him, and he kept coming in. I was like, okay. I guess I'm supposed to go to Ashes. So I reach out to him and end up basically staying with him for a few weeks. And Ashes, a beloved brother who really, he lives this presence. He's a full, definite embodiment of this unconditional allowance and joy, and and so to be with a being who is actually anchored in that undying presence, something really stabilized something for me in that moment.
Yeah, he would call it the confirmation.
Yeah,
that's what he would call it. I think same thing is like, I mean, not actually very different. I mean, that's an amazing story. Glad I asked about that story. Phenomenal.
Good one.
Yeah, I had a vague memory of it. I'm like, yeah, that's an incredible story. But yeah, for me as well, I kind of like opened something inside me, and when I spent time with him, in this case was in Miami, when he was giving satsangs, he was like, it was like this reflection of like, oh yeah, like somehow, I don't know, I can't really explain why, but there's something about that part that's valuable. Like, no one can really give you who you are, because you are who you are, but somehow someone who's realized who they are can help you to realize who you are, like confirm the truth. Because he had this awakening, but he didn't really know what it was. Yeah. And he started watching Ganga Jin, and he's like, oh yeah, that's what happened. That's what I realized. That's what happened to me. So yeah, I so appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking.
Yeah,
that's a fun one.
Yeah. What are people saying out there, Annie?
We just have a lot of resonance, hearts and lights coming in. Thank you, so true. Thank you for being here. Couple newbies on, William Langlois from BC, Canada.
I know William.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, I didn't say this when you enter to say where you're from. I always say that.
Mm-hmm.
You can share where you're from at the end now instead of the beginning or near the end. Yeah, thanks everybody for being here.
Thank you.
I'm thinking of one other particular interesting like turning point in your life, which I don't think we've really gotten into too much. I saw you in Bali, and Annie was in Bali too. So 3 of us were in Bali. But you were there first, and you were like, I'm like, how is it out there? Like, I'm loving it. This is how it's good. I see myself being here. This is home. I was being here for years. You got a beautiful place to live. I was out there. It was a beautiful gathering there that I was at, and everything was just like, seemed like it was really flowing for you. And then you get this call that your brother's in a serious car accident in the States, and you went back like the next day, right, or that day.
Yeah, 2 days after I found out.
Yeah, so like, how do you reflect on that, or how does your mind kind of grasp that of like being in a space where it feels like everything's going how you want it to go, and then life's like, nope, this is the way it's gonna go instead.
Thanks for asking that. That's it. This is definitely a big turning point in my life, where Bali was this representation of like everything that I could want, tropical fruit, nice beaches, amazing people, dance, play, it was just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And then as the master life is in its way that it perfectly brings us the lessons that we need for our evolution, this happened with my brother. He was in a really intense accident, and I didn't know if he was going to make it. He had, lost like over half the blood in his body by the time they got him out of the car. And most of the people, the medical professionals, didn't think he was going to make it. And so I went back a couple days later and ended up spending basically the next 9 to 10 months pretty much side by side with my brother. And it was going from this experience of this like spiritual high kind of a sense in Bali to the perfect balance point to bring consciousness fully here, in a sense, to bring compassion here, and to actually like kind of come down to earth. And there was this deep humbling that happened because of this, where this is my own blood on the table, on this medical bed that may not, his bodily life might not continue. And so I was with him in the hospital for, I guess it was about a month or longer, and then he moved into a rehabilitation facility. And so every day I was going and being with him and being around people that were legitimately suffering. You know, a lot of people in this hospital were really suffering, especially in intensive care where he was initially. And so it took all of this kind of high energy and really just brought it all down in some way to really surrender to life, and instead of the me imposing itself on life, saying this is everything I want and I want it this way, which was, Bali was pretty much like that for me. It was like so much of what I would ask for, and then to surrender into, instead of imposing self on life, letting life impose itself on me. And so when that happened, suddenly there was this shift where suddenly everything became so much more real in experience, more grounded and more actualized. And it was a deeply humbling experience, because a lot of my life has been self-centered in a way of, through my practice, being in several years of a practice, a self-practice and whatnot, and then to move into an unconditional service, in a sense, to just be there, and that suddenly my needs kind of dissolved, they disappeared. And it was really beautiful, because as I would be in the hospital, I would walk past these rooms, and this sense of love amplified itself. And suddenly there was this, it was amazing, because this vessel started becoming attuned as a vessel of service, just simply through the resonance of love that I sensed coming through me, not trying to do this whatsoever. It was just, what was noticed is there was this sense of love that was pouring into these rooms and with my brother, and it was a very healing resonance. And so, like what you said, what you brought up before with the spirituality thing, it was like, Bali was kind of that box for me, where I said, this is it, and suddenly that box kind of got blown open. And as I've really looked at this experience more, it's brought me into the actuality of there's nothing that's not a spiritual experience. There's nothing that's not the fullness of reality manifest. Like the seemingly densest reality is actually the fullness of consciousness, the fullness of presence, as much as total like blissed out, like dance, ecstasy. It's all still this one reality, just a varying expression of it. So it was a really beautiful experience that definitely
it feels like that was the lesson. Sounds like that was the lesson to deepen into.
Yeah, definitely, because I was still chasing in a big way, chasing that experience, and that never ended. Okay, that I had that experience, what's the next, and it constantly kept this separation kind of in motion, this seeming separation in motion, to chase that I'll be fulfilled when I have this experience, opposed to realizing that, fulfillment is actually what's always here, and whatever expression of life is here, fulfillment is here no matter what. And so really, that was the big lesson. It brought me way more here in that sense.
Now we're back in the Appalachian Mountains, where we first met together, which is a blessing. And I always told you, I think you're gonna come back to Asheville. I feel it.
Every time we talk.
Yeah, I always told you that.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Anything you want to share before we part? Anything that's happening now, it's alive for you, or any kind of thing that's any insight that's feels like the world should want to hear?
one of the things I've been really reflecting on, which we've touched on in this share, is the direct investigation of our own experience. How, you know, we can really spiritually study and take in a lot of information, and we think it's like, you know, if I get enough information, then I'll be free, then I'll be enlightened, then I'll be spiritual, and there's a shift from taking in information, which is valuable and beautiful, to actually just starting to look at one's own experience and to just really look, you know, what, and inquire into our own experience to realize the truth of reality. So to, as a kind of like a strategy, you know, it's like a trigger for those realizations, to inquire into our experience, to really look at the self that we think we are. Take that for example. So it's like, if we really look at thought, not just take a word for it that it comes and goes, that feelings come and go, but to really look at these things. Does everything of the world of form actually come and go? Is there anything that is constant? And so when we start to see that there's everything that's coming and going, to really look and feel into what's here, you know, what's watching everything come and go, and to start really investigating that instead of taking our words for it, that presence is here, that love is here, to really start looking into our own experience to see that, oh, actually, there has been this presence that's always been the same throughout this entire life. The body has changed, thoughts have changed, the thought of who I am has changed. So if the thought of who I am has changed, could I be the self I think I am?
No.
Because it comes and it goes, so how could... And so just to really look at experience in this way, to start embodying, taking the top heaviness of all the information and to actually start embodying it, so we can become walking, living expressions of this truth, this presence that walks as compassion and as love and all-inclusiveness in a really beneficial way.
Thanks so much for being here.
Mm-hmm.
Love and appreciate you so much.
You too, brother. Love you so much. Yeah.
Thank you all for being here.
Love you.
See you next week.